Pivot tables. So pivot tables are one of Excel's most powerful tools and is used to calculate, summarize, and analyze data. They're really easy to use once you have the basics down pat, and despite being known as an intermediate or advanced feature of Excel, they really are not that difficult to use. So to get us started, in today's video, I've created a dummy set of sales data for 2019. It's a fairly simple data set. It has a buyer ID, which represents or identify who the purchaser was, the date at which the item was purchased, the product name, the product type, so the type at which the product falls within. At the moment, this data set has three main product types: technology, food, and books. It has the sales price for each item as well as the cost of goods sold for each item. So the cost of goods sold, or COGS, for those of you that have a background in accounting or finance, is just the cost to actually purchase that item for us to sell, if that makes sense. So it's the cost to the business of that unit. Okay, so let's create a pivot table. So to do that, all you need to do is click anywhere within your table, click on insert, go to pivot table, and Excel will ask you just to confirm your data range and whether you want to keep the pivot table within the existing worksheet or the new worksheet. So by default, it's going to select new worksheet, and the data range that Excel selects is pretty good, provided that you've clicked somewhere within your table. So just click OK, and Excel will actually create this pivot table for you with the fields selections over here. So our first goal of pivot tables is to create a table that will sum up the total sales for our store. There are four areas that you can drag your table fields here into. The first is the filter area, and dragging items into this area will allow you to exclude data similar to the filter feature in a normal Excel table. Then you have the columns and row fields. And think of these as both the header that you want for your table as well as the level of detail that you want to convey your information. So generally speaking, the more table fields that you drag into these areas, the more granular or detailed your information will be. And this will make a little bit more sense when we populate our pivot table. Lastly, you have the values field or area, and this is where you place your table fields which hold the information that you want to convey. So in this case, we want to provide a table that sums up the total sales for our store. So the table field that we want to drag into the values area is clearly the sales price. Okay, so there's two ways that you can do this. You can either just tick on sales price, and Excel's pretty smart. Excel's pretty smart. It can kind of guess which area each table field should be in. So alternatively, you can also drag the table field into the area like this, okay, and it just populates it like so. So we only need one, so let's just delete this one, and we can see here that the total number of sales that were made for the duration of the year is $622,798.37. So that's a really quick way to sum up all of the sales that you've made for your store. However, by itself, it's not really all that useful. So one of the things that you might want to do is provide a little bit more detail, or split up the total sales into different categories. So to do that, if you want more granular detail on where your sales are actually going, you need to drag fields into the row or column areas. So in this case, let's drag the product type into the row area. Okay, and what we see has happened here is that the sales figure has been split into books, food, and technology. So here we can see that we've generated $12,862 from sales from the book category, $5,231 from food type items, and $604,705 from the technology column. Technology field. So it should be pretty obvious from these figures that most of our revenue is actually generated by sales item. So if you also want to get a total number of sales for each individual product, all you need to do is click on the product name. Okay, so we would drag this under the product type, and what happens is that all of the products under each category are populated under that product type. Okay, so here we have figures for the total sales for each individual product within that year. So there are a number of ways that you can change the formatting of your table fields. So we see here the sales price data is just in a generic kind of number format here. So we can do it the old school way by simply selecting all of the cells that we're interested in and going up over here into the formatting box, and it's just changing it to the desired format that we want. Okay. The alternative is if you just right click on any of these cells, you can right click on it, go to number format, and then you can change it through here as well. Okay, and we're just going to set it to currency, and we're going to set it to 0 decimal places just to make it visually easier to look at. And there you are. So you'll notice it'll do it for the entire thing, even though you only changed it for that cell. And the reason it's doing that is when you right click and go into number format, you're not changing the format of that individual cell, you're actually changing or specifying the format for that entire table field over here. Okay. At the moment, what we have here is the sum of sales for each individual product for 2019. What we want to do now is actually show these sales figures per quarter. So to do that, we want to utilize the date data that we have. So if we click on dates, drag it over to the column area over here. Okay, and Excel is pretty good. It's already grouped the date data that we have by months. But in this case, what we want to do is group it by quarter. So if you right click on this date field here, right, go to group, you can actually change the grouping itself. So at the moment, it's grouped by days and months. Okay, so if you want to see the days, you simply just click on this little plus sign and it'll actually expand it all out. But what we want to do is group it again by quarters. Okay, so group, and just click on quarters as well and click OK. And what it'll do, you'll see over here, is it'll add another layer on top. Okay, and now we can summarize our data by quarters. And there you have it. So you still have the original sales data for 2019, but now you also have that more granular detail in that it shows you the sales that you've achieved for each individual product on a quarterly basis. And if you're really interested, you can click on the plus symbol here next to each quarter, and it'll give you the detail for each individual day or in each individual month. Okay, so generally speaking, you don't really need the daily figures, so I'm just going to remove the date field, and I'm just going to have it grouped by quarters and then months. In pivot tables, you can also create a calculated field using the information contained in your other table fields. So in this instance, we are going to calculate the gross profit, which is the amount of revenue or money that you have remaining after you take away the cost of goods sold. So just to make things a little bit cleaner to look at, we're just going to remove these date fields. Okay, and to create a calculated field, go to Analyze, go to Field Items and Set, and click on Calculated Field. And it'll bring up this pop-up box here. So it's going to ask you to name your particular field. We're going to call it Gross Profit. Okay. And gross profit, to calculate it, is simply the sales price. So click on sales price, click on the insert field, or just double click on the actual field item and subtract it by the cost of goods sold. So double click on cost of goods sold and click OK. And you'll see that it actually creates another field for you over here. So the gross profit for USB-C charger cable is $375.84. So this is the profit, the gross profit that you get after you take away the cost of goods sold. And that's it. So similarly, if you wanted to modify or delete a calculated field, just go back to Field Items and Sets, go to Calculated Field, and you can click on this drop down box, go to Gross Profit, and you can modify it or delete it. So we can delete it if we really want to, and that's it. What we are going to do now is insert a slicer, And a slicer is a quick way to quickly filter your pivot table by a particular field. So in this case, I want to add a slicer for product types so that I can quickly look at the sales information for specific product types. At the moment, sales information is displaying for all product types, and for our data set, we really only have 3 product types: books, food, and technology. So to insert a slicer, simply click on anywhere within your pivot table, go up into the Insert tab, and go all the way to Slicer. And Excel will ask you what slices that you want to add. And in this case, we want to add a slicer for the product type. So click OK. And it will bring up this visual kind of filter interface. And at the moment, it's got all 3 product types selected, which means it will display all 3 product types. But if we just want to look at books, simply click on books, and it'll just bring up the sales information for books. If you want to select more than one particular item, just click Control and then click on another product type, and it'll bring up that item too. So what's really cool with slicers is that you can actually stack them together, and it's similar to just a standard normal filter. You can filter across multiple different fields. So to show you what I mean, click on your pivot table again, go back to Insert, and now what I want us to do is insert a slicer for, say, the product name. Okay, so now say I just want to look at food. You can also select what particular products you want to filter as well. So let's say I'm only interested in books, and I'm only interested in the sales that we got for The Introverted Guide to Social Interactions, and another thing, and Are You the Problem, and Choice is Illusion. So again, if you want to select multiple fields or multiple product names, I should say, remember to click the Control button on your keyboard and then click on each of these items. So we can see here that it's brought back the sales, the total sales amount for these 4 books, right, for this particular product. And that's it. So I hope that was helpful, guys, and all the best.